Today on Manna at the Table, I'm thrilled to be joined by Brenda Dooley. For the past 25 years, Brenda has been coaching Irish business managers and leaders to develop their strengths in order to deliver superior performance and personal effectiveness. She draws on more than 20 years business experience in a major Irish financial service organisation, having held a variety of roles from operational positions up to the C-suite role of HR director. Her approach is pragmatic and challenging, whilst grounded in solid business experience. Welcome, Brenda.
Lovely to see you, Martina. How are you doing?
I'm well. I'm well. Not so long ago, we saw each other in
We did.
person.
Yes, we had quite a good night, if I remember that.
we did. We did. And of course, we have met through our lovely Consulate General here, Sheila Fitzgerald, who's been a long
Yes,
friend of yours, Brenda.
she is actually. Sheila brought me into foreign affairs to do some work with them. So that's where our relationship started. And then we became friends as a
Yeah.
result of that.
And
Yeah.
then, of course, you've
Yeah,
visited Boston as well.
that's right. That's right. Yes. And coming again in October. Touch
Excellent.
wood.
Oh, good. Oh, that we can't wait. So Brenda, I'm really excited about today's conversation, and we're going to hear a little bit about your professional background, and then we're
Yeah.
going to talk all about women knowing their value within their organization. Brenda, do you want to just tell us a little bit about your own professional journey?
Yes, indeed. I'm probably carbon dating myself now when you've listed. I had over 20 years corporate experience and I add 25 years working as coach. So you can guess there where I'm at the moment. I'm probably at the far end of my career. But that sometimes is very helpful with clients, particularly with females that I coach. I've been through it all. I've seen it all. Things have changed and things have come around and things are not changing and things are reversing and things are moving. So yeah, coaching is my passion. And I really got into it after I left the bank, as we call it here in Ireland. I left the bank and I set up my own practice as a HR consultant. But what I found was I enjoyed more helping people find solutions to their own issues. And I kind of segued into the coaching space more than the HR consulting space. I still kept it as an offering, but what I really enjoy is working with women and helping them to get up that corporate ladder and navigate that glass labyrinth, as we would call it.
Yeah.
It's not quite the glass ceiling. I think it's the glass labyrinth that we have to navigate our way through. Funnily enough, the issues that face women today are the issues that face me 25, 30 years ago when I was working my way through the corporate world. So yeah, it's always a challenge. Very, very enjoyable. Very enjoyable. I do enjoy it.
Oh, that's great. And then, Brenda, when you set up your coaching business,
Yes.
um, were you thinking, well, what I saw when I was working for the bank, that I can take what I learned or didn't learn and help other women.
Yeah, there was a good part of it. I faced issues. I was pretty much alone. I'm talking, when I was in my sort of career trajectory, we're talking where are we? The 90s, really. I faced particular challenges. It was banking in Ireland then, and probably still now, was quite male dominated. And I found it a very lonely path. And there weren't very many women that had kind of gone through it like I had, and things were interesting. I felt that I was being rewarded because I didn't have children and I was around and I was available for promotion rather than getting a good crack at the whip earlier on, I think, more than that. I think when I moved into HR, then I was actually seeing how the organisation dealt with staff and with women in particular, and the attitudes to women and in particular in organisations. And yeah, that unconscious bias, it was around then, it's around now. In fact, there's quite a conscious bias in some cases, but unconscious bias I felt was there. Not out of any harm, it's just that people had different frames of reference, So I worked in an organization where the chief executive and all the senior management team all had wives who were stay at home. The typical corporate wife. And when I was appointed HR director, this was unusual because I had a partner. I didn't even have a husband. He was a partner. And so I couldn't introduce him as my husband. So they didn't know really what to do with me. I wasn't fitting the mode that they would
Right
expect
into the
in
bus.
the C-suite. So I met a few kind of bumps along the way. I have a very funny story to tell you, if I may. My
Yes.
very first the Christmas dinner where the management team, the senior management team came together, and the CEO brought us all out and brought the spouses out. And the tradition was that he would present the wives with a gift every year. So I said to Brian on the way in, I wonder what he's going to give you. Now, he's going to be in a right pickle now. What is he going to give you as the gift, you know? Anyway, we arrived in, and there were little, it was a fancy restaurant. There were name tags, name plates, and there was a gift behind every female name, including mine. Now, I suppose, in my body, I reared up. I'm emotionally reacted to this. I was, oh, for flip's sake, I can't believe this. So Brian, there was no gift in front of Brian, but it wasn't done out of badness. Now, I actually left the gift behind that night. I didn't take it. I didn't open it. That was my kind of way of dealing with it. And on the Monday morning, his secretary came to me and she said, Brenda, you forgot your gift. And I said, no, I didn't forget my gift. Why was I given a gift? I was a member of the management team. Why wasn't my spouse given the gift? And it was very interesting. It wasn't done out of any harm, but he was an old-fashioned gentleman. I thought, well, you're the lady, so the lady has to get the gift. So there was a lot of that stuff going on in the 90s still in banking in Ireland.
And I suppose, as you said, it wasn't anyone's fault. It was
No,
just that was how it was.
yeah,
What was then
just the
in
frame of
banking,
reference.
right, right, the end,
Yeah,
and in the financial.
yeah,
And actually, that's. I mean, we're here in the US, Brenda. That was, it was the same in the US. It
you're
wasn't
not
unique.
surprised by that.
Right, right. It was, yeah. It
Yeah,
wasn't unique to Ireland.
yeah, yeah. Interesting. Well, things have moved on,
Yeah,
thankfully. But,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you
it's
say things have moved on, but yet, I mean, still, it's. I mean, it's still. I mean, women still. Have to. I mean, fight for their place.
absolutely.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is we have it's kind of a double bind. We have to be both competent and likable
Right.
in the world, certainly in the world of work. Probably in even in politics. They will always refer to whether a woman is likable or not. And they don't actually care whether a man is likable as long as he's competent. So some people say they'd prefer to work for a competent jerk than a likable fool, sort of thing. So
Yeah.
the competence is important in the male world. Are they competent enough to do their job? Whereas a woman, are they competent and likable? Are they liked in the role? And that's an interesting bind that women find themselves in. Do you
Yeah,
know?
we saw that, Brenda, here. I remember when Hillary Clinton was running in the primaries with, and I'm sure you read
Yes.
all about it,
Yeah.
against Barack Obama, and it was all this, you're likable enough,
Yes.
and that's what they talked about. And if she cried, oh, she was emotional, and if she didn't cry, she
Yeah.
had no empathy. So I mean,
And all the discussion about what she was wearing, you know?
yes, 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 exactly, exactly. And then
Mm.
just to go back to the likable, do you think
Yeah.
that's a liability, Brenda, for women? If they're
The li-
trying to be, do you think it's a liability if women are trying to be liked? If you're in your role and you
yeah.
you want people to like you, or
I think it's I don't know about your audience, but certainly when
yes,
I grew up, you were meant to, when you were kids, right? You show off your dress, girl, turn around, be liked,
yeah,
Auntie so and so is admiring your dress, don't you look
right,
beautiful? So
right,
I think we were brought up with that
yes,
likability. It is important
yes,
to be liked and admired. And I think that's running through female DNA still. And I think we're in the bind as well, because we also want to know if a woman is likable or not. And it's not just males deciding whether a woman is likable or
yeah,
not likable. Women, go with the same, I suppose, bias in terms of looking at people in positions of power. So if you're displaying masculine traits that are usually accepted in the workplace, you're not liked. If you're displaying female traits like warmth and compassion, you're
right,
probably not taken as seriously. So the double bind that we're in is we have to display both in order to get up through organizations. And then you say, how authentic is that to yourself? Do you know?
right. And do you think? I mean, what can we do, Brenda, to you know
More female bosses, I think.
more female bosses?
Yeah, I think definitely. And funny, um, They talk about sometimes women pull up the drawbridge behind them and say, well,
Yes.
I made it. I worked my
Right.
whatever to get here. And now I'm going to display the same male qualities that I was trying to fight
Mhm.
against as I went up through the organizations. So I think women being true to themselves and
Right.
supporting other women, I think it's the supporting of other women, because actually women are highly competitive with each other.
Oh yes, very very
Very competitive with
very
each other. Do you know? So we tend to say, well, I killed myself getting here. I've done the work, and
okay.
it's up to you to do the work, not necessarily for me to bring you, you
Oh,
know?
yeah, yeah, bring, what,
Yeah.
there's a, I can't remember, there's a phrase about the ladder, you know,
The drawbridge. Pull
yes,
up the drawbridge. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But, and I suppose then, women, we have to do a better job of, that it's okay to, to be ourselves, to be authentic.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, but mediocrity is accepted more from males than it is from
Oh,
females. So you still have to outperform, it seems to me. And it would be interesting to have a discussion with younger female managers these days. But it still strikes me that women have to work twice as hard, or, try twice as hard to get half the distance still. We have to
well, no, they do.
overachieve to do
No,
that.
they do. I mean, we talk about it all the time, Brenda, about,
Yeah.
you know, the pay and how women have to, you know, ask and, put themselves out there and
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And we're not known to be assertive, I suppose, really, in that. It's not expected of us.
yeah,
So that's an interesting one if people are trying to look for kind of pay increases. You really have to know when to time it, know what you're looking for, know how to position it, have your market research done,
yeah,
have your case ready. Don't highball. There are many sort of things I would say to people if they were trying to get a pay increase, particularly as a woman. They expect men to come in and say, "Oh, you need to pay me X," but they don't expect
okay,
women to do it. So women have to make their case. I think it's about making your case, really,
okay,
in those sort of circumstances.
right, right, right. So that when you do ask, that you know what I
You
guess
know what your worth is.
what your worth,
You
know your value, right?
know your value, know what's going on in the market. So you don't just say, well, I feel I deserve a pay increase. And the first thing you're going to be asked is on what grounds. So you need to know what's the market paying, what's the range. You can establish that from surveys. And we have a website here, indeed.com or
Oh, yeah,
indeed.ie, that people
yeah,
can do comparators, and you have your networks. So to be able to go in and provide the evidence and the logic, don't forget, most bosses need the logic to justify any decisions that they make,
okay,
particularly if they're male bosses.
right,
Female bosses might have a different issue, but male bosses, don't forget, we have to use their logic rather than our logic in order to win any sort of argument or get anywhere. So be careful of what logic you would use when
okay,
you would go in. A woman going in saying, well, I don't feel I'm valued enough, and I commit and I collaborate and I get on really well, they're all very good reasons
mm-hmm.
to justify a pay increase. But if you're talking to a head of finance or a CTO or a CIO, if it's a he, is not going to be thinking those ways. He's going to be thinking hard facts.
Numbers,
So you go in with the logic of
yeah,
the person that you're trying to influence, really. And particularly if we're having this male female conversation, and I don't mean that there's
no,
still a tension, and I don't mean to say that it's an aggressive sort of
right.
situation, but we need to be able to deal in that world, if that's the world we're playing ball in. Do you know?
Right, right. And then I suppose, yeah, and we're not, it's, the
Yeah.
conversation is about, them and us, but then
No.
I suppose then we talk about, men being our allies. So, I mean,
Yes.
what can women do? I mean, or what can men do more to support women in the workplace?
What can men do to support women more in the workplace? I suppose what I would say is, how would you like your daughter to be treated?
Yeah, that's all. Yeah.
And that's enough to switch a man to think in a different way, because they do support women, but they just need to reframe it in a way. And if their daughter was going in to look for a pay rise, what would they be saying to them? Do you know? So as you say, it's not a them and us. It's just a
No.
way to navigate the labyrinth, is how I describe it. And sometimes you have to use the language of the day, which may not be your.
Right.
Now, there's a whole different discussion then. How authentic is that? But
Okay.
that's probably for another
That's
podcast.
another podcast. So I suppose, yeah, yeah, that's very true. How would you like your daughter to be
Yeah.
pleased? Yeah.
I found that that's simple enough that to make men change. It's just to flick a switch, really, in their thought processes, probably.
I suppose
Mm,
it's all about education, really, isn't it, Brenda?
isn't everything?
Yeah, isn't everything? Yeah.
Everything.
Um. So, and then Brenda, just I mean, we'll focus a little bit now. We'll say on women, and we talk about being able to market ourselves and know your value. So, I suppose if you're in an organization,
Right.
what can you do to, I
Okay.
guess, know your worth, know your value? What
Yeah.
what can you do?
But you see, the first thing I say to people is most people only see about 10% of you. We're like icebergs. We just show the tip of the iceberg. So you have to use that 10% in a really, really effective way if you want to get around in an organization. Because who we are at work and who we are at home are probably two very different things. Who I am at home with my husband is very different to who I will be out in the workplace. So we only show about 10%. So what are you going to do to maximize that 10% in terms of what people see? So the impressions, the first thing I would say, the impression that you give counts. So if you want to be taken seriously in an organization, and it doesn't matter whether you're a male boss or female boss, impressions count. So visibility accounts. Do you know? How you look, how you demonstrate yourself. What is the organization norm for appearances, right? And if the organization norm is X and you're not displaying X, you're not conforming to that norm. Now you can choose. If this is the playground you've chosen to play in, you need to conform, I would suggest, to what the expectations and standards are. So your impressions count, I suppose. That would be the first thing I would say. So the way you package yourself, the way you package your image, what professional image or persona you want to demonstrate. So have a think about that. That's what I'd say to people. Have a think about it. You can be whoever you like when you're at home, but if this is the football pitch you're on, make sure you have the right persona. So then the next thing I would say to people is, perception becomes reality. Do you know? So if you promote yourself in a certain way, people believe that that's how you are. It may not be how you are at home, but if you market yourself or you're perceived to be a certain way in an organization. So think about how you come across. Um, what steps do you need to influence people or influence people's perception there of you? That would be something I would be suggesting people think about. The other thing I would say is associate yourself with success. So if there's something good going on in the organization, try and be part of that. If there's a committee or a focus group or a forum that's doing good stuff, or if there's a particular department that are doing better than others, try and get in there.
Okay.
You know, position yourself, to be where the successful people are, if that's possible. Um, and the other thing is be visible. Nobody buys sight unseen. So if you're not visible within an organization, how can you get the opportunities? How can you be provided with the opportunities? And I'll just do an aside on that one. This remote working and the
I was actually
dominance of
that was going to be a
remote
question.
working is a real issue here for women and their visibility in the organization, right? So that's something that women are grappling with now and organizations are grappling with now, because most of the remote working is done by the females who have domestic responsibilities or whatever going on in their life.
Mhm.
Um, and remote working has an impact on their visibility. So that's the one I would say about, if you're not visible, it'd be very hard to be getting the opportunities. So when the boss is looking around or you're at a meeting, and that's fine, it could be on Zoom, but the people who are in the office who are at the water cooler after the meeting or having the cup of coffee after the meeting may have more influence. So I'd say really be careful about that. Again, that's where women are in this bind. How do they get on in organizations with those things? So go to functions, attend those networking groups, turn up at the office, be at the game. If that's where people are, you do have to be seen. That's what I would say. And we talked about competitiveness. You have to kind of sell yourself properly. Don't undersell yourself. When somebody says, that was a great piece of work. Don't, as women say, sure, listen, it was a team thing,
Yeah.
Whereas normally we should say, or what we should actually say is, thank you very much. Actually, yeah, it was great. We did a great job. But, you often hear women saying, "Actually, that was nothing.
Yeah.
I do that with my eyes closed." So they're underselling themselves, and that doesn't help. So think a lot about your executive presence, as we call it. And a man would never, in fact, in my experience, they would tend to oversell themselves as opposed to undersell
And
themselves.
I think Irish women too, because that was how we were raised.
Yes.
Oh yeah, don't. Oh no,
Oh, so
God
that
no,
was nothing. Yeah.
nothing.
I was doing that when I was spinning plates and doing something else at the same time, I'm just an all-rounder. Um, the other tip I would give people is kind of be nice to do business with, you know? There's no point in climbing over everybody else to try and get that promotion
I say
because
you could meet them on the way down, right?
and you meet them on the way down, correct. Be very, very careful. So do build a reputation of being nice to do business with. And I'm not saying be soft nice. I mean, just be genuine, be authentic, be reliable. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Don't, overplay it, all that sort of stuff. But what we really need to get a key in is what is your unique benefit or your unique selling point? What is it that you have? And that's very helpful when you come to go for interviews. And we'll talk about interviews in a minute. But I think people need to know or need to understand what their unique benefit is to the
And
organization.
into that, Brenda, is it lean
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I would think what I see when I'm doing interviews, and as you know, I do a lot of interviews for public sector bodies,
Mm.
um, and people don't really know when they come to interview what their key selling point is. And just to lock into that, whatever your key selling point is, be aware of it and nurture that one. Um, so the eager beaver, get involved. A rising tide lifts all boats. Get involved. You won't get rewarded for not being involved in an organisation. That hasn't changed since I was working corporately. And the other thing I would say is keep widening your horizons. Do more. Try and do more if you can. If you can, I know some people can't, but if you can, do more. People market themselves that way. Do you know? They're visible. They're around, and just lifelong learning. Just keep learning. Keep doing something. So they would be the things I'd say to you if you're in an organization to try and market yourself within that organization.
Yeah,
Job hunters are a different kettle of fish.
we say, it's it's you have to be at the table.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. If you're not there, nobody will know.
No, no.
Nobody
I
will know about it.
was doing my EMBA, and I talk about this all the time. And we had a seminar in Washington on public policy, and all I heard was, well, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
You're on the window.
On
Huh?
the menu. You're on the menu.
You're on the menu.
And actually, that was when we were brainstorming about names
Lovely.
for our podcast. That was kind of, but that was in the back of our minds. But yeah,
Yeah.
but
If you're not
yeah,
on the table, you're on the menu. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. You talked a little bit. You touched on Brenda interviews, and
Yes.
you have done lots of work um prepping people for interviews,
Mm.
both the public
Yeah.
and the private sector.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking maybe for some of our younger listeners that are
Mm.
coming out of college and are,
Yes.
because it's a tough job market, Brenda, out
Yes.
there now.
Yeah.
And people are interviewing and interviewing. So maybe do you want to give us a few of the do's and the don'ts?
The do's and the don'ts. Okay. The first thing I talked about, know what your unique selling point is. Know what it is that you're trying to sell. Um, You'd be surprised at the amount of people when somebody asks you, why do you want this job and why are you interested in this organization? And they tell you all the things that they want out of the organization. Oh, I'd love a challenge, or I'd like to work in this sector, or whatever. Now, what's missing is what you can bring to that organization, right? And I see this over and over again. People, you say, why do you want this job? Or why are you interested in this post or this position? And they say, oh, it's a great challenge. I like a challenge. I like the sector. I like to do this. And you're going, yeah, I can't make a decision about you with that information.
Probably a bit vanilla, isn't it? That's kind of what everyone says,
Yeah,
Brenda, right?
everybody says. So
Yeah.
if you came into an organization and I say, why do you want this job? And you say, well, actually, I've got X experience and Y, and I've done this and I've done that and the other, and I've worked in the sector before or whatever. List all the things that you have so they can say, you have it. you have a clued in, you know why you want the job. It's because what you're bringing to me in this organization. And I think that's what a lot of people, male and female, seem to miss out on when an interviewer or a recruiter is looking to recruit somebody. You have to know what you're bringing. I give you an analogy. If you wanted the house painted, right, and you get two quotes, and I come in and you say, well, why do you want this job, Brent? And I say, well, I just love painting. And the area you live in is really, really beautiful, and it would just be lovely to paint your house. And you go, yeah, I can't decide. So Brenda Ella arrives in, and Brenda Ella says, well, actually, I've been in the business for the last 15 years. I have X number of clients. I've worked in A, B, C, D. I can give you references from A, B, C, D. So you're giving me information to allow me to make a decision. And that's what I would suggest to people is why you want the job is what you're bringing to the job. Yeah, you can deal with all the other bits and I like the sector and all that sort of stuff. So that would be the first thing. Why do you want the job? It's a very simple question because fundamentally there are only three questions in our heads as recruiters.
Tell us.
Yeah, they're really that need answering, right? Is have you the skills to do the job, right? Do you want to do the job? And would you fit in? Now, we mask that with 15 interview questions and competency questions, but ultimately all we're trying to decide is, will we give Martina the job? Has she got the skills to do it? Do you think she'd fit in with the team? And does she really want it? Has she got some passion that she'd like to bring? And we ask so many questions to get to that answer, but that's all we're trying to make a judgment on, really, in the end, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah, no,
I agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's true, yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that, people then they just give, as we said, the vanilla answer that,
Yeah. So you have to distinguish yourself from the
well,
next
right.
candidate that's coming
Yeah.
in with giving good hard information and good hard facts about yourself. That would be the first thing I would say to you. There are certain things every organization looks for. So they look for your ability to deliver, right? So your achievements are important. That's why we ask you about your achievements. Can they deliver something? Can they actually do what we need? If it's a leadership role, you need to know what your leadership style is. And you'd be surprised the amount of people who still haven't egged that, really tightened that up. What's your leadership style? Because if you're going into a leadership role, I need to know what you're going to demonstrate. And you'd be surprised the number of candidates don't actually think that through. Yeah? Lots of people will tell you what they do, but they don't tell you how they do it. And that's important in an interview, how they actually delivered that project. So I'd be interested to know if you killed everybody on the way to deliver the project and there's a whole trail of destruction behind you.
Heading to HR.
Yes. That is one way of getting a job done. In fairness, it is one way of getting a job done. But that wouldn't be what I'd want in my organization. So how you get the thing done is really, really important. So they'd be looking at leadership, they'd be looking at delivering results, they'd be looking at your judgment, your analysis, your decision making, your ability to work within a team, your ability to work with other people. So what about 6 or 7 areas? Now we dress it up in all sorts of fancy stuff, but if you got those 6 or 7 areas down pat in terms of what you do and how you do it, I think that gives a candidate an edge over another candidate. And of course, talk to an interview coach.
Yes, exactly.
Before you
Like,
go.
but I think people don't think about your ability, your about you fitting into the organization and how you work with other people. I think sometimes they're focused on their skill set and what they can do, but actually being able to be part of the team is really important. And
Absolutely. Yeah. And, when we talk about the advent of AI and everything else, I think people will still make decisions over who comes into their organization. People will still want to see the package. So I come to an interview full of my little unconscious biases and my little preferences. And I interview Martina and I have a feeling about her and she has all the skills. And if I like her, she'll be the one that gets the job. That likability factor, male and female. Now, if I like the candidate, we'll talk about the candidate. If I like the candidate, that helps. So I often listen to people around the table when we're discussing a candidate afterwards, and a lot of people say, "Yeah, I really liked that person."
I've said it.
Yeah, do you
Yeah,
know? So
yeah.
and so that likability factor, male or female, in an interview situation is really very important. So they have to feel, still a feeling. Every decision where a person is concerned is emotional. Every decision has an emotional element to it. So if I don't like you, you could tell me everything. You have a PhD, you've done this, you've done that. But if I don't get that feeling, the chances are you're probably going to have difficulty convincing me to give you the job. Do you know?
Okay.
So,
I guess then, Brenda, that's a nice segue because there's two
yeah.
things I know that you're very passionate about, and I want to talk about um unconscious
Oh,
bias and
yeah.
why do our brains do it, and then I want to touch a little bit on
Yeah.
emotional intelligence, which is
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know you've
Yeah.
done a lot of coaching around unconscious
Yeah.
bias.
I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but I mean,
No, no,
or a
but
neuroscientist, but I've
yes,
done a little bit of
yes,
investigation into the background of all of this. Okay, our brain is so busy. We take in so much information at such a quick speed. We can't afford to pay attention to everything. So we've created little shortcuts, right? And that's where our biases come in. We created shortcuts. Do you know? So over the years, whether it's through our upbringing, whether it's through our experiences, we all have biases. Good people have biases, right? Um, they're not always conscious of those biases, and we tend to hide any negative biases that we have, or we do our damnedest to hide any negative biases that we have. They're conscious ones, but a lot of what is going on is that 90% underneath the water, that iceberg piece. So yeah, just as probably way by a few examples when I'd be talking to people about this, I said, well, okay, you've just met me, right? I'm going to make a number of statements about me, right? And I want you to tell me if you think it's a truth or a lie. Okay, so will I try some on you?
okay, come on, yeah,
Okay, all right. Um, okay, I've smoked cannabis. Is that truth or a lie?
yes.
Okay. Right, I'll tell you as you're going through. Um, I've appeared on the stage on the Sydney Opera House. Truth or lie?
Oh God, we'll have to edit
Well,
some of
no,
this.
just go very fast.
Yeah,
Just
because I feel you're very outgoing, so that's why I said about the
you wouldn't be
cannabis.
surprised.
Maybe we'll delete that. So, so we'll delete it. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, at the Sydney Opera House. Yes,
Yes, on the Sydney Opera House.
yes.
Okay. I grew up in an inner city environment,
No,
in a poor environment.
no,
Okay. Um, I've a pilot's license.
no.
Um, I've written a book.
Yes,
I'm gay. Okay. Right. Do you see how quickly you're answering things
yes.
based just on what you're seeing of
Yes,
that whatever I present to
that's a
you,
little
that
bit
10%?
academic. I
Yeah.
can't claim to know you super well, but
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
little time I
Okay.
have spent in your company, yes, because when I said about the Sydney Opera House, I could say, well, yes, because you're, very
Yes.
outgoing, great personality, so I could see
Yeah.
you there.
And that's what we do. We
Yes,
make assumptions about people based on sight and if the first initial interaction. You say, oh, that's highly unlikely, that person. And
yes,
so why do we do that? It's all the biases and all the shortcuts and the things that have been going on in our lives that we say, oh, that person is likely to because they have that personality, or that person is unlikely to. I actually have been on the Sydney Opera House. I was accepting an award. I wasn't singing or doing anything like that. And unfortunately, I did smoke cannabis when I was young. So
we
you're
might
not bad at this game.
take that out.
But it is interesting
Yeah.
because when I'm addressing or doing a seminar on this, and I list all these things, you'd be surprised at what people think.
Yeah.
I say I have a tattoo, and they go no, and then I show them
Oh,
my tattoo.
yeah.
So
Well,
people.
I would have said no.
You would just said no.
Yeah.
So yeah, people you make
Yeah.
assumptions very, very quickly, right?
Yeah.
And we do that because we don't have time to take all that information in. That's
Okay.
basically it. And we tend to relate to people who are similar to us, and we tend to not relate to people who are dissimilar to us. So say, for example, you and I, we know each other now a little bit.
Yeah.
If you said something off to me or rude to me, I would probably say, oh, she was just having a bad day. If I know you and I don't like you, right? Because people don't like everybody. That's just the fact of life. And you said the same comment to me, I might then say, yeah, I'm having nothing to do with that person. So we let people we like away with stuff,
Okay.
and we don't let people we don't like away with stuff, right? And that's all down to the biases that are going on underneath in the current of what's going on, if you know what I mean, underneath that iceberg. So it does happen. So every decision we make around a person is influenced by the biases we have. And I tend to do this unconscious bias kind of training, and I don't like the word training, so I'll put it in quotes because I can't train you out of a bias. I tend to do it from the perspective of decision makers in an organization. So if you're a team leader, be very wary of your bias of against or about any, positively or indeed negatively, on any of your team members. When you're doing your performance appraisal, be very careful. Am I letting Martina away with murder, or am I letting Brenda off the hook? And am I influenced by my biases? So that's where I try to encourage people to heighten their awarenesses around their biases.
And it's not, I think sometimes when
Yeah,
also, people think, oh, unconscious bias, that it's all negative, but you say it's
it,
not. It's
it can be positive.
positive, right?
Yeah. If you, what school did you go to? What college did you go to? Oh, you went to UCD. Oh, the same as me. Ah, yeah. Do you remember so and so, so and so? Blah, de blah. Do you know? I
Yeah.
remember the amount of times I read the sports pages on Sunday going into work on Monday so I could talk about the GAA
Yes.
match that I had no interest in order to create that kind of rapport with people. So, yeah, it can be positive and negative, and I probably should have said that. Have you heard of Project Implicit? No. Okay. These Project Implicit is a research program. It was developed in 1998, and it's a joint program between Harvard, Washington, and some other university. There's three of them involved. And they run a series of tests called the IATs, which are the implicit association tests. Google it. And
Okay.
you can go in and test your biases.
Well,
It's really, really interesting. Now, it's interesting. I wouldn't make decisions based on them, but it's interesting to show where your preferences lie one way or the other, right? And there's one about um, gender and career. Right. There's one about women in the home, that sort of stuff. Sorry, I'm sorry. Sciences. There's one about. There's a lot about different nationalities: Black, Asian, Chinese, and there's one about presidents, which is interesting. I only went in today to do one on presidents.
oh,
Okay,
interesting.
and the association of good and bad words with the different presidents. So it's very interesting to see
Okay.
the
Okay.
associations. And there's one there on your current president
Okay.
that you can
We can.
have a look at that.
I'll have
Um,
a
yeah. So I didn't make it up. It's up on the Implicit Project's website. The IATs they're called, and it's very interesting because you may find that you have a hidden bias where you actually think consciously you don't have one. Right. So I found that I strongly associated women with the home in one of the tests that I did. I had a strong association. I thought that's interesting
Yeah, I
because
would never think that of
I've
you.
never given birth. I've worked all my life. I've always worked. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't have consciously thought that I would have that preference. So you're a victim of what's happening in the world and how things are associated with you. And bias is it's really an interesting topic. And I was only kind of going over my notes, and I remember I was trying to think what would be relative to you. He had a president, the 29th president, Warren Harding was his name.
Yes.
Yeah. He was elected on the basis of his good looks. There was nothing else. He was the worst president, apparently, in American history, as at the time of writing the article that I read. Anyway, he was the worst president in American history, considered, because he had no policies. Everything was just dreadful. But he was elected on the basis that he was tall, muscular, handsome, a bit of a ladies' man, and that's how he was elected. There's a
Not,
whole piece of research done on him.
not a great resume to be
Not a
president.
great resume, but yeah, no. But his record was particularly poor, and
Okay.
that has
Yeah.
there has been research done as to why he was elected, and he was elected purely on his good looks. Mm.
Interesting.
There's an association of um, power and height,
Oh, yeah.
leadership and height. And apparently, 40% of American CEOs are over 6 foot tall, but only 15% of the population's over 6 foot tall. So there's an association of leadership with tall people. There you go. Did you know that?
That's it. Well, yeah, that's it. That's interesting. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you look at tall people and you say, oh, they have a great presence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. if I need to be saved, a tall person will save
Right,
me quicker than
right,
a small person. Maybe that's some bias that's going back
right. Well,
way into our DNA. Um, it's interesting how it kind of pops up.
yeah, and
Um,
I mean, it's not just in the workplace. Yeah, it's in everyday life.
everywhere,
It's
everyday life.
we go to the
Yeah,
grocery store, you go to the
yeah,
hotel, you check into
yeah,
a hotel. It's in
yeah.
everything we do.
Now they're only generalisms, of
No,
course.
no, I know.
We had a president who wasn't very tall, so
Yes, yes,
our
you're
last
right.
president.
I
So
know that. Yeah,
yeah.
but no, but it's definitely. I mean, it's a topic people talk about it all the time, so it's nice to touch on it.
Yeah, I think
Unconscious bias.
when when you're in a position of power, I think people need to be more aware of their
Yeah,
potential
right.
in terms of their own decision making
Yeah,
capacities in terms
yeah.
of other people.
Yeah, and I suppose it
Yeah.
is. I mean, it's as it's not intentional, but you've just said it. For people just to be all about awareness.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually, those IATs, and I'm not selling them, but they are a useful tool just to go in and have a look and see actually where might you lie on this scale of things,
you
and you
know.
might get a surprise.
Oh yeah, no, I'm going to definitely take that test and
Yeah.
report back to you,
Oh,
Brenda.
don't. I'm not a policeman. Keep it to
Well,
yourself.
look at that report back to you. Oh,
Indeed, indeed,
and another
indeed.
thing, Brenda, we talk. No, no, this is fascinating. We talk a lot about too is emotional intelligence. Yeah, and I know
Yes.
that yeah,
Yeah.
that a lot as well.
The world has gone upside down, but emotional intelligence, how I would describe it, and there's a lot of work done on it, it's knowing what emotional state you were in. To even know the emotional state you were in
Okay.
allows you to deal with that. So emotional intelligence is about knowing what emotional state you're in, and whether you choose to act on it or not. That's the intelligence piece, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
And again, when you're in organizations, that's really, really important. So throwing the toys out of the pram, having a hissy fit. We've all worked for bad managers. I'd say you've worked for a bad manager in your career, have you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You probably still remember the person's name. I do. And we've all worked for good managers. But if
Yeah.
we've worked for a bad manager, I bet you that bad manager didn't have emotional intelligence. No. So they either gave out to you, or
Yeah.
um, they let their feelings about you known. Their biases were very conscious. They probably didn't allow you speak up. They probably didn't listen to your viewpoint. They are the ones that epitomize poor emotional intelligence. And what I say to people is just be the exact opposite to whatever that was, and that'll get you a long way. There's no need to get into too much kind of uh, I suppose research on these topics.
No.
Just most
Some
of it is just using common sense, to be
I was
honest.
just about common sense and reading the room.
Reading the room. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, reading the room.
Yeah. And do you think, Brenda, we say, oh, sometimes, they say, oh, women have better emotional intelligence. Sometimes you'll hear it at meetings. Oh, but, he has no
Yeah.
emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Or is it,
I
or it's
don't think
unfair to
that's
say it's
actually
unfair to
gendered at all. I
yeah,
don't think it's a gendered issue. I think it's a more a personality issue. In
right.
my view, I've seen women with very high emotional intelligence, and I've seen men with very poor emotional intelligence. Um, the awareness, I think, is the important thing. The ability to read the room and not react in the moment. That just being an adult, really, more than anything else, to be honest.
But sometimes you have to remind people to be an adult. Yeah.
There's a very, very, very helpful piece that I would often share with. I shared it a lot now with coaching clients over the years, and it's in the field of transactional analysis. And you don't need to go into this in too much detail, but we all have three different kind of modes that we operate in, and there's the parent, adult, and child. So the most optimum mode that we should be in is when we're both. This is an adult to adult
Mhm.
conversation. We're having a proper conversation. You're listening to me. I'm listening to you. You have opinions. Whatever. If we adopt a parent child approach, somebody will be telling somebody else what to do. So you can be a critical parent, or you can be a nurturing parent. So in the work context, you could be critical and say, you didn't do it that way, you should have done it this way, and daddy, 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 da, speaking down to the child,
The child
right? Who
down, yeah.
then becomes the child and then says, well, you didn't tell me how I was supposed to do it, and I didn't get any instructions as to how I was meant to deal with this project. You could have the nurturing parent, who's the person who won't delegate and is too paternalistic or maternalistic towards a member of staff, and that then the other person then adopts that childlike position and goes, well, I'll keep asking you to help me because. Whereas true coaching is when there are two people in that adult to adult mode. And I sometimes find that that helps people. So if you're in a situation, you say, well, what mode is this other person in and what mode am I in? And you try and work it that you both become that adult where you're actually having a direct conversation and not being treated as a child or acting as a critical parent. There's a lot more to it than that, but in the context of a very short podcast, I hope I've given you just a brief overview.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, this has been really great, Brenda. Um,
Oh,
thank you so much.
enjoyed it. There's so much more. We could talk
I know we
forever.
could
We're
talk, but
only the
talk
tip of
forever.
the iceberg.
Yeah, this is only you'll have to come back.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to. I'd love to.
Thanks so much, Brenda.
Lovely talking to you. Thanks a million, Martina. See you soon.